So welcome to everyone today to this meeting of the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website. It will also be available for viewing after the meeting. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. I've received apologies from Parent Governor Adina Murataj today. I don't believe there's any others. No? Good. So we move on to item 1, and the first item of the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 3rd of June that can be found on the pages 3 to 12. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Thank you. Agenda item 2, this is question time. I've received no questions from members of the public, so I'll move on to item 3, questions asked by members. I haven't been made aware of any of those either. Good. So item 4, and I have no urgent items. So item 5 is the declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest they wish to declare? Yes, Ms. Pendlebury.
It's really to note, I do work for the NHS and the NHS forms part of this report, though I do not work for the areas that are mentioned.
Thank you very much. I declare an interest as a parent governor at a maintained school. Any others?
I'm a governor at a maintained school, thank you.
Thank you very much. So item 6 is declarations of party whip. Do many members wish to declare the party whip? Perfect. And item 7, I've not received any petitions either. So moving on to the first substantive item, which is the Transforming Send and Inclusion in Leicestershire Programme Summary and High Needs Block Update. This can be found on pages 13 to 28 of the agenda. Scrutiny Commissioners Dr. John Bloxham, Mr. Andrew Innes and Mr. Michael Mullaney have been invited to attend the meeting for this item, and I believe they can ask questions. There's no barriers to that either, so good. Mrs. Deborah Taylor is also here as Chairman of the Scrutiny Commission and also sits on this committee. This invitation has also been issued following a conversation about the TESOL programme and the High Needs Block at the Scrutiny Commission in June. Welcome to you all and thank you for joining us today. Tim Brown, Assistant Director for Education, Send and Inclusion, and Renata Chanterelle, Head of Service, Business Support, Education Quality and Performance and Planning will present this item. Please start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to councillors. So the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with an update on the TESOL programme, but also to look at some of the work we've been doing around managing the demand pressures within the SEND system more generally. And what it does, it sets out the progress since the last committee report on the 5th of September in 2024 and looks at the programme impact and next steps, as well as the overall financial position of the High Needs Block itself. Members will probably recall that between 2016 and 2022, we saw a huge increase in numbers of requests for children and young people with education, health and care plans, and those increased by 94% during that period, following the introduction of the SEND reforms in 2014. In March 22, the financial position facing the authority was set out in the Council's medium-term financial strategy and indicated a cumulative dedicated schools grant high needs block deficit by 25-26 of £84 million if no further action were taken or mitigating measures put in place. A detailed diagnostic exercise was undertaken in late 2021 to understand the challenges and the scales of the difficulties both locally and nationally, and to look at what difference we could make within the local SEND system in order to pull together a programme which eventually became the TESOL programme. And using the evidence from that diagnostic, which highlighted some of the biggest challenges to meeting needs of children and young people, were meeting them in the right place at the right time. And the delivery of the programme was structured around 4 key work streams. First of all, we have inclusive practice, which is detailed in paragraphs 33 to 38, service transformation, which is looked at in paragraphs 39 to 42, and then our communication and engagement, which is paragraphs 48 and 50, and accurate information, which is paragraphs 43 and to 47 as well. At the same time all that was going on, the government announced a change programme nationally to test some of the ways in which we could manage the SEND system across the country better, and there's some details around that in paragraph 51 of the paper as well. So we just move on to impact. What we've seen as a result of the work of the programme is that we've seen a really significant increase in numbers of children and young people attending mainstream school rather than special schools with education, health and care plans. So that increased from 42% at the beginning of the programme to 51% currently. So a really significant shift there. And that's around 750 more pupils in mainstream schools. Which is good news, actually, because what we do know is the national evidence is very clear that where children and people are in a mainstream school, they tend to achieve better academically than other settings. So good news all around. Whilst it wasn't the key drive, it was certainly one of the areas we wanted to look at was what the cost avoidance would be of trying to educate children to a better standard, but also at the times trying to do it in a much more cost-effective way. And what we've seen so far is that the cost avoidance of the work of the programme has resulted in £17 million of avoided expenditure, and by 2028-29, we estimate that to be around £34 million. So again, really significant cost avoidance funding there. What we've also seen is the slowing of the growth in EHCP numbers, and I would have been able to say that so it carried on throughout the entire programme. But what we've seen as a result of uncertainty nationally around the SEND reforms since January this year, we've seen a huge upturn, but that's mirrored across the country as well. So we're just monitoring that and looking at a range of different measures to address that. Education attainment generally has been significantly better. We measure that in terms of progress rate and attainment rate, and we've seen a significant improvement within Leicestershire when you compare it with our regional colleagues and the national as well. I'm also pleased to see that the numbers of children and young people who are 19 years old with EHCPs achieving a level 2 qualification has improved from 10% in 2021 to 22 to 20% in 23-24. So again, really good outcomes there. And many of you will have no doubt be aware that there's nationally a lot of discussion around the numbers of EHCPs that are produced within 20 weeks, because that's the national target. At the beginning of the programme, we stood below 4%. We're now approaching, in the paper it's around 19%, but we know that we're approaching 25% now on the unpublished data. So again, really good progress there. And the average wait time for a plan has reduced really quite significantly. So in terms of next steps, the TSIL programme is coming to an end, and there's various parts of that work which we picked up in a wider programme as we develop our belonging and education strategy, which sets out how Leicestershire will deliver the ambition of belonging for every child and young person within all education settings across the county, and provide the framework for all our future improvement work, both for SEND but also additional needs, and for children and young people who may or may not have additional needs at any point in their time in their life, and that will lead to make sure that children and young people within the county really can live their best life. What we do know, though, is that the budget deficit is continuing, and there's details in the paper around that, and we're just currently reworking what the depth of that deficit is going to be with the new data we've got, because of the forecasts that we have there are around 2 years old. So we're just working through that, and that'll be available in due course. I hope, Chair, that's provided a brief overview of the paper. Probably longer than I would normally give, but it's quite a complicated paper and there's quite a lot of detail there, but hopefully that's helped frame any discussion we have now.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Pugsley, as lead member, do you have anything to add at this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm really confident with the direction of travel that the department have set out in this report. I think it's undeniable to say at this point that we are operating in a really challenging SEND environment. Demand has spiked again this year, and as Tim has mentioned, we've got reforms that are coming nationally that will be coming over to us in the autumn that we are going to have to translate into Leicestershire quite quickly. But I think it's really worth noting that despite all of these challenges, teams within the department have managed to reduce backlogs and really improve timeliness. So it's really good progress to see.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open the floor now to questions from members. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Charlesworth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick ones, really. On paragraph 15, it mentioned the budget of 6,000 per pupil, which dates back to 2014. Have you any idea what it should be now?
Yes, if the Department for Education, which is responsible for setting that budget, were to update it, we think it'd be around £10,500.
Thank you for that. And then another one on 20, the new framework. You've no idea when the new inspection will be then?
No, we're in the inspection window now. We are obviously preparing for that as we go forward. But I suppose I do wonder whether or not, with the reforms coming out in the autumn, whether there may be a reconsideration of the inspection framework at some point in the near future. So it'll be interesting to see whether Ofsted decide to pause inspections come the new year, or whether they carry on with them under the current framework.
Any more questions? Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Piper.
Sorry, forgot the microphone. Paragraph 64 on page 22, you talk about a number of complaints that were issued. How many of those were upheld?
I don't have that data to hand, but I can certainly make sure we forward that on to you after the meeting.
Do you have a rough idea?
I don't, on the top of my head. Yes.
I've got the data, just happen to have the complaint report in front of me. I don't have it in my head, but there were a number of complaints that came in around SENA, essentially, so send cases. Of the 446 that came in, 72% had fault found on them, so were upheld. And the three main themes were delays in providing a service, so the kind of delay in assessment, as Tim's outlined. There were complaints made around the decision making as well, and then the other theme is around communication as well as the kind of key themes. But 72% of the complaints were upheld.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, the communication, I think, is similar to one which appears in a later report as well, doesn't it? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for inviting me to the meeting today. So point 75 says there's been a 14% increase in the HCPs in the last year to 8,213 as of the end of July. So there's still an increase nationally. I suppose the first question is the general view that will just continue going up and up, or will the reforms nationally mean that the figures might therefore begin to reduce? And secondly, on point 72, it says that obviously the HCP assessments, it was 4.3% in 2024 within the 20-week objective, now gone up to 18.6% and towards 25%. How does those figures relate to other authorities over the last couple of years?
Thank you. Some really good questions. It's difficult to know what the reforms are going to introduce. I suspect there'll be quite a long lead in time because there'll need to be primary legislation changes in order to enact the reforms. So I don't think we're going to see any change, particularly in that growth in the short term anyway, possibly to the medium term, which does create some challenges, obviously, for all local authorities across the country. So it's really about watching that space, but we're looking to mitigate some of those risks and working with our mainstream schools to work through how we can support children and young people in a mainstream setting, which seems to be the government's direction of travel with the reforms anyway. So as part of the change programme that we're being funded for, we're working to develop a school inclusion offer to make sure that those children and young people can thrive without the need for any HCP. And I think that will build confidence in the system as well. So that's certainly one of the key directions of travel. In terms of nationally, we are still probably about half the national in terms of our 20-week data, but I think it's been quite an uphill challenge for us given the growth we've seen nationally. But we're in a much better position now, and month on month, that percentage increases. So nationally, it's around 48% completed within 20 weeks.
Mrs. Taylor, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously, within the report, we've finished with the government's delivering better value programme as well, and obviously now the TISL programme's coming in end, and it's into business as usual, but continuing along that scope. But we're still forecasting to be overspent from the budget that we receive from the government. So I suppose, obviously, you mentioned the reforms, but where do we go from here? I think is my question. What do we do in the meantime while we're waiting for the reforms to come in? We don't even know what they are actually going to be, so we can't continue. I know the safety valve has been extended the deadline to March 2028, but that's not that long to go, is it, till we hit that deadline again, as whether we have to pay that money back. So it's just a question of what we do now while we're still over budget.
No, really good question. I think the problem we've got is a volume issue now. So as the numbers increase, it's putting extra pressure on, as you would expect. But what we're also seeing is since January, because of some national discussions around whether EHCPs will continue, the request for new EHCPs has just escalated enormously. So month on month, we've seen the highest numbers of requests that we have since the reforms came in. So that's one of our difficulties there. Part of our next steps really are around introducing the belonging strategy. And within that, there'll be a range of different elements to try and curb that growth so that children and young people can thrive in mainstream without having an EHCP. And we're exploring a range of measures. So how can we support mainstream inclusion, improving speech and language access, because that's one of the key issues. Part of our Send Investment Fund is looking at how we can provide outreach support for children and young people and look at alternative provision. And Sarah, as part of the music service, will talk about the alternative provision that she's thinking about as part of that. So there's a range of different, really quite innovative areas we're exploring, and I'm holding a number of support and challenge sessions with my team and the wider system to ask how we are going to address this, because whilst we've made great progress, I mean, it really is quite significant, we know that we need to do more.
Yes, Mr. Page.
Just like to say thank you firstly for that, for the excellent report, and it was quite complex, I have to say, coming to terms with some of the acronyms in there, trying to understand it. So a base question I've got would be this: can you tell me what guidance, if any, schools are given in terms of how they consult with parents and caregivers before any kind of intervention occurs? It wasn't covered at all, I don't think, in that report, but it's something that's of interest to me, because as an ex-governor of a school, I was told that actually parents basically sign their kids over, loco parentis, whatever, and it's up to the school to decide what it is in the school time that they do with kids. And so if it's diagnosed, or if it's established that there is a need for intervention of some kind, they will do that without actually consulting parents. Is that standard procedure?
No, it's not. So schools have a range of different interventions which they can introduce. So we often talk about the ordinary available offer in schools, and schools would usually use those strategies without further reference to parents. But where they're making a referral to an external agency particularly, or inviting an educational psychologist to come in to assess a child, we would expect consent to be gained, and that's one of the requirements of our own EP service, that they would want parental consent. Similarly, when referrals are made to health professionals as well.
Thank you. If I can, I've got a couple of questions myself. Firstly, obviously, I believe one of the main barriers to getting access to an HCP is the amount of paediatricians who are available to run the assessments. And I wonder how our collaborative approach with the NHS works in trying to find those experts that can run it. That's my first question. Secondly, obviously, we've got the funding here. And I was reading through the report, I wasn't clear whether that was just for our maintained schools, that was the whole provision. And is there a difference in funding when it's a school we have direct control over, if you like, or whether it is an external partner school, and how that funding looks different? And if that is the case, there is a funding difference, is that potentially something we're going to look at, trying to provide more spaces within our own schools to maybe bring down the cost if there is a significant difference between the two? Thank you.
Yeah, no, some really good questions there. So if you look at if we use an independent special school, it's probably at least twice as much as our own maintained special schools. So we look to expand capacity with our own provision as far as possible. So you're looking at an independent special school can cost anything between around 60,000 to £250,000 for a place. What we find is that our own special schools places between 22 and 30,000, so they are significantly cheaper. But the provision is just as good. But it is a supply and demand issue. So building capital stock takes time. We've expanded our own provision quite significantly over the last couple of years, and we're also looking to develop further specialist provision through an area-based special school, which allows significant capacity again. But the problem we've got is that demand keeps outstripping supply because of the issues that we've talked about and that are well rehearsed. So we are looking to do that wherever possible, and we've just taken back in-house our alternative provision service as well, and we're expanding that also to provide additional capacity. So that's one of our key strategies for addressing the cost issues that we referred to earlier. The other aspect is that the assessment side of things is problematic, both nationally and locally. Any child that has an EHCP or is in for a needs assessment for an EHCP must be seen and assessed in some way, shape or form. Nationally, what holds that up is the capacity of educational psychologists and also speech and language or SEMH, social emotional mental health support and assessment. So yes, they are particular issues, but we've tackled the shortage of EP assessment capacity in some quite innovative ways, so that all those cases are overseen by an EP, but we have a range of different professionals brought in who are suitable and appropriate to assess that child. We'll be also working with our NHS colleagues to explore what the Waiting Well offer is for those children and people who are waiting assessment for ADHD or SEMH or some other particular area, and how they can be supported during that waiting period as well, because that's particularly important that families also feel that they're not waiting infinitum and they're not having to tackle those issues on their own.
Yeah, just to add to that, and just wanted to come back to add a little bit more to Mrs. Taylor's question as well. Just on the matter of funding and SEND funding, as you can see from the paper, we are, and you would have seen from the outturn report, we are predicting a significant overspend on the high needs block. And I guess for context, in line with the question, we often as a local authority have little choice around where we spend the money, because the legislation pushes us into needing to make choices that end up costing us more probably than needs to. So the amount of money we spend doesn't always equate to better outcomes. Actually, our in-house provision, that delivered through schools, that delivered through our special schools is absolutely exceptional. That, as Tim said, doesn't cost us as much. The independent provision that we procure and we buy for children costs us huge amounts of money, and often we're pushed to do that because of a sufficiency challenge, or indeed it's parental choice as well. So the high needs budget is a budget that we are responsible for, but we don't have entire control of, which is an unusual position to be in as a department. And I think in answer to sort of the question around the kind of what next, some of it has got to be about national reform, because we are restricted as a local authority around some of the changes we're able to make, which we would think in the best interest of children, because the national or nationally they really do need to look at reforming the governance and the systems around decisions that are made for SEND children. So actually there could well be enough money in the system if we were able to spend it in a better way for children. So really, really complex. And the other bit, it's similar to the point around assessment. The code of practice is really explicit about how we need to assess children, which has led to significant delays for children because, for example, we can't get enough educational psychologists. So we're hopeful, I guess, that a lot of the things that can make things better for children will be in the reforms. But as Tim said, we've got a long run-in time before that becomes legislation in order to then have an impact, which would be better for children as well.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's actually a follow-on from your question, really. It's well known, obviously, that the EPs are the bottleneck. obviously the numbers coming through, we haven't got the EPs to do that. I appreciate now that we've got people underneath looking at that. But earlier this year, well, I know we sat around the table discussing potentially using emerging technologies, AI. So instead of, because a lot of the children in question don't need an EP, they just need assessing quickly. Now that can be done rather than in a matter of months and weeks. It could be done in a matter of minutes. I think to 8 minutes seems to ring a bell. That was mused around at some point. Are we any further along with that? Thank you.
Really good question. So we're doing a lot of exploration about AI and how it might be used. And James launched a particular program just this week, actually, to help staff understand the implications and what might be the art of the possible. The 8 minutes you're referring to is spot on. It's around where you get AI summarising all the assessment information, which takes hours and hours for a professional or for panel members to read. But actually, where we've got it to is it has done it within 8 minutes and provides a really nice summary of needs for that particular child. Very early stages at the moment. We were exploring that both as part of our local work here, but also the change programme, which we're feeding internationally on.
If I can, I did have a follow-on. I got distracted by Mr. Smith. His arm was very good. And it was around, I know that schools within my own area are paying for private investigations. There you go. And parents are doing the same thing. And I wonder how we work alongside that, because obviously it does help bring down the weight in percentage, but also is there a quality issue there? Because do we know the investigation they're going through, is it as good quality as what we would do in-house, and how do we manage that in essence?
Yeah, no, again, a really good question, because of course parents or schools commissioning a piece of work for a particular purpose, and that may or may not be to get an EHCP, it may be for other reasons, but we will always consider private reports as part of our assessment process, but they will be quality assured by our own professionals as well, to make sure they provide a balanced opinion and view, and 9 times out of 10 they will do, but we'll make sure we do incorporate that into our own assessment of a child for an EHCP.
Ms. Shawyer, do you have a question? Sorry.
I do, thank you very much. Jane has heard me bang on about this before. I'm not going to apologise for still raising it. Within the current legislative framework, parents and carers can request an educational healthcare needs assessment, as has been referred to already. And I believe it's really important that is understood as an assessment of a child's needs. It is not an application for an EHCP. It is an application for the local authority to undertake a formal assessment of a child's needs. And actually, that process, when it's done and done really well, really does provide a very valuable piece of information, both for parents and carers and also for schools. It may or may not lead to an EHCP, and that's exactly as it should be. It shouldn't be the case that schools and parents and carers consider that a request for an assessment automatically means an EHCP will be issued by the local authority. That's not the local authority's, that's not a requirement of the local authority, unless the assessment indicates that statutory provision is required. So my question is, how can we continue to work in partnership with schools and other agencies to secure a good understanding of what the HCNA process is and isn't, in order to support the local authorities' drives for improvement and better value, and fundamentally for better outcomes for children and young people in Leicestershire? Thank you.
Thank you. A really good point. The key focus of our work is around how we can support children and young people in a school setting without the need for additional resource through an EHCP, because actually that's better for all children, but it also means there's more money in the system supporting the school system generally. So where that's possible, we certainly will do that, and that's part of the work we're doing through the change programme and looking at our local mainstream inclusion offer to make sure that schools have all the strategies and resources available to them to support children without the need for any HCP needs assessment. But actually, I think it needs to become part of our bread and butter day in, day out, to make sure that we don't have to put children, young people, families through hoops for additional capacity, for additional resources that actually we could deliver in a much better way if we're providing that at the front line in mainstream schools.
Did you want to come back, Shoya? Are you happy?
Thank you. I would like to come back, Chair, if I may. Thank you for your response, Tim. I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and I do appreciate that likely legislative changes are on the horizon. But as it stands, it's my understanding, my experience, that actually both schools and parents and carers consider that point of application for an assessment. They consider it an application for an EHCP. And my question is, what can we do to improve the messaging at that point, that actually this is about an assessment of a child's needs. It is not an application for an EHCP. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. It is critical because often people regard a needs assessment as an application, and because of the way the national framework is written, the bar is very low. So often a request would go through and an EHCP may well be awarded. But what we need to do, I think, is to build the confidence of parents and families in a school's ability to meet need without having to go through an assessment. And that's, again, a key focus of our work, so that we can develop those particular confidences. And we're doing it through working with our parent carer forum, so that they can build up confidence of the local parent groups and look at ways in which schools and other agencies can interact with families, so that they do have that confidence that those needs can be met without a need for an application. But I suppose the other thing worth mentioning is that some parents want to make an application for an EHCP because then they can express a preference for a particular school to be named in their child's plan. So it circumvents the usual admissions round. So that's certainly an issue that we do experience.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think it's a really valid point, Carolyn, because there's something around that shared understanding, isn't there, of the process of the education, health and care plan. So I think there's some immediate things we could do, especially because we're at the beginning of term, around communication and to be explicit about that process of a needs assessment as opposed to a plan. So I think it's a really helpful push, actually, about making sure we get things right. I guess the context as well is being clear it is a needs assessment, and we can do some cons on that. But I think the point Tim's making as well about how can we collectively build the confidence of parents and schools to look at how we can support children to be successful without a plan as well. So the two go hand in hand, don't they? But I think it's a really good challenge, actually, around some of that. Are we all in the right space of understanding the education, health and care plan process? No, it's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you very much. And I think if we can have an update, maybe if we are at the start of term, some of that communication with schools or with parents, because I think that was really compelling, I think, the question and the thought-provoking. I think if we can have some update about that wording or that communication that goes to schools and parents, because I think it would make a huge difference and hopefully bring down that wait time as well. If less people are expecting the result to be this, and maybe there's some action we can be done there. So if we can have an update, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions or comments? Yes, Mr. McDonald.
Hello, I'd like to read out a statement that I've had by email from a certain individual. You probably know her. Before embarking on GCSE courses, we were advised by your previous head of EOTAS that she would arrange an exam centre for her child to take exams alone in her complex disabilities. You carried out a professional assessment, and the report states that she needs to take the exam alone at home with a scribe. Do you think it's fair and reasonable you now decline to do so?
Thank you.
Probably wouldn't pick up on individual cases if that's okay within scrutiny, but I'm more than happy for you to send that in for me to have a look at so that we can make sure that we've done the right thing for that constituent. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to thank the contribution and also thank the individual scrutiny commissioners for attending the meeting. You're welcome to stay, but realise you've probably got things to do. So thank you very much for attending. I'd like to move now on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the Children's Social Care Statutory Complaints and Compliments Annual Report for 24-25, and that's on page 29 to 74. Jane Moore, Director of Children and Family Services, and Alicia Lanham, Head of Business Services, Corporate Resources, will present the item. Welcome to Alicia. Thank you for joining us. And you can start when you're ready. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Just by way of introduction, the report that you've got in front of you, or 2 reports you've got in front of me, you've provided a summary of both the children's social care statutory reports, but also the corporate complaints as well. It's a report that we bring to this committee annually so that you can have a look at the complaints that come into the department and what the themes are and how we respond. So I'm going to hand over to Alicia, who's going to take us through the report. Thank you.
Sorry, good afternoon. So this report presents the Children's Social Care Statutory Complaints and Compliments Annual Report for the period of the 1st of April 24 to the 31st of March 25 and has been prepared by the Complaints and Information Services Manager. The committee is asked to note its contents and is invited to make comment. As you'll be aware, the Council manages and coordinates complaints using one of 3 policies, and the main subject matter of this report is complaints managed under the Children's Social Care Complaints Policy, and it also touches on those managed under the Corporate Complaints Procedure. The annual report is produced each year, and we've also appended the one for the Corporate Complaints, as James just mentioned. So if I can ask the committee to turn their attention to the background section of the report. I won't go through each paragraph in detail, but I'll aim to pull out the main salient points. So the Children and Family Services Department is contacted daily by service users, carers and other parties with concerns or requests for information. These queries are dealt with at a local level within the care teams or through the Director's office without recourse to the formal complaints process. Complaints team do on occasion also receive queries and concerns that suggest a child or young person may need immediate support. And such cases are best handled outside of the formal complaints procedure and are referred to the first response team or allocated workers as appropriate. Eligible children's social care complaints will be managed under the statutory complaints process, and statutory guidance is used to determine eligibility for that process. Children's Act 1989 representations procedure regulations sets out the policy framework against which children's social care complaints should be considered. These regulations set out a 3-stage process, which is reflected in our local policy, and these regulations also place a duty upon ourselves to prepare an annual report, which is what I'm presenting today. Matters which fall outside of the statutory complaints procedure are handled via appropriate alternative means, such as the corporate complaints procedure, and other examples are detailed within the actual annual report itself. Just looking at paragraph 8 and 9 of the cover report. So in terms of the statutory process, so in 24-25, 41 complaints were considered at stage 1. This is compared to 42 in the previous year. At stage 2, 4 complaints were considered at stage 2. This compared to 7 in 23-24, which is a positive direction of travel. We would want it to be less. I would just ask you to note a correction here against paragraph 14 of the cover report and 2.3 of the actual report. Both should indicate 3 less, and the percentage of stage 1 complaints going on to stage 2 is 10%. At stage 3, 3 complaints were considered at stage 3. And just to place these volumes in context of the good work of the department, just over 0.7% of the number of referrals go on to make a formal complaint. So it's a very, very small percentage. And again, just on the correction in terms of paragraph 10 was included an error. Looking at paragraphs 11 through to 13, which relate to the corporate complaints cases. Obviously, as I just mentioned, not all complaints will go through the statutory process and are instead considered by the corporate complaints procedure. And the council follows guidance from the Ombudsman in determining such cases. And it may be because the complaint is not eligible or the subject matter falls outside of the scope of the regulations. In terms of cases considered under the corporate complaints procedure, these were 168 in 24-25 compared to 129 in the previous year, which is an approximately about 30% increase. And the majority of those cases related to child protection matters. So in terms of the total cases then relating to social care, this gives a combined total of 216 for 24-25 compared to 118 in the previous year, which is an approximate increase of 19%. And again, just to note a correction to the annual report, where it is stated 3%, but it's 19. Looking at paragraph 16 and the causes of complaints, analysis of those complaints received showed that the main areas complained about were about staff conduct, customer care and poor communications, and these reasons were often interlinked. Moving across to 17 and 18, during the year 2 complaints were received directly from children or young people, and the complaints manager continues to have good links with the children's rights officers, and this is to show that young people are not blocked in any way from accessing the full complaints procedure. Moving through to paragraphs 19 through to 23, which talks about response timescales. The council responded to 58% of the complaints at stage 1 within statutory maximum timescale. This is down from 63% in the previous year. There are often good reasons why it would exceed the 20 working days, and for examples, people electing to have in-person meetings, things like that, which personal contact is very positive, but it doesn't stop the clock from ticking essentially. In terms of stage 2, timescales of stage 2 complaints also improved during the year, with 3 of the completed investigations being concluded within statutory timescales. The council has continued to manage stage 2 investigations through an in-house arm's length investigator, and this does help with managing the response timescales, but also the quality of the reports and reducing unnecessary escalation into later stages of the process. Looking at paragraph 23, stage 3, 2 of the 3 panels held were convened and responded to within the statutory timescales. The remaining case was delayed by the complainant's availability to attend the panel hearing, which is what is part of the stage 3. There's just to note a correction here, so that's 67%, not 50, and the correction to the text at paragraph 3.1 in the annual report as well. Paragraph 24 of the cover report, which talks about the Ombudsman cases. So the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman investigated 31 complaints relating to social care during the 24-25 period and found fault in 11 of those cases. Paragraph 25, so financial payments totaling 5,200 were made during this year, along with recommendations to review policies, procedures, strengthening the complaints handling and taking steps to improve record keeping and documenting conversations with key. Looking at paragraph 26 of the report, which relates to complaints. So during 24-25, there were 6 compliments recorded regarding children's social care. And this is a decrease from the year previous, which sat at 18. The complaints team can only record complaints which are received directly to them, and they do continue to encourage staff to record those complaints. But obviously, as many of those are directly received by the service, then obviously that figure might not be truly reflective just of the volume of complaints that we received. There are examples of compliments at Appendix A, which I think provides some balance to the complaints and highlights the good work of the department which is taking place. Looking at paragraph 27 of the report, which talks about learning from complaints. Obviously, complaints are a valuable source of information which can help identify recurring or underlying problems and potential improvements. Complaints can usually be learned from those that are upheld, but also in some cases ones which are not, have no fault. Remedial action can typically consist of both individual redress, which are things like apology, carrying out overdue work, and then wider actions that might affect the many. There is good evidence of learning from complaints at a local level, with the learning from upheld complaints having clearly articulated actions to improve wider performance above and beyond those of the individual themselves. The most common action taken was staff training, and there are lots of good examples of that taking place at an individual and at a team level. And again, some examples are provided within the report at page 12. The annual report outlines the costs incurred through the statutory complaints procedure, where 9,300, which is a decrease from 12,715 the previous year, supporting the benefits expected from the department continuing to fund a full-time complaints investigator. And the report does not highlight any specific opportunity implications. The only thing that I would just note, which isn't in your cover report, but does relate to the corporate complaints procedure report, which might just provide a little bit of additional context. So obviously you'll have the opportunity to have read it, but the 5 service areas with the highest volume of closed complaints in 24-25 were school and SEND transport, child protection, drainage and child in need. And the corporate complaints report does highlight good work that the SEND service, and I know that Tim's obviously just been speaking to you about that in terms of what they're doing. But it does particularly pick up around the improvement work that's taken place to look at communication and the duration of the needs assessment. I will pause there for comments and questions, please.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Buckley, any comments?
Perfect, thank you. I think it goes without saying that every single complaint that the department receives is of great importance to us, because it gives us a really valuable chance to evolve in the way that we offer our services based on this feedback. I'm regularly briefed on the main themes of the complaints and compliments that we receive and what the department's doing as a result of it. And I can say with confidence that I'm certain the department will continue with its focus on delivering timely and clear communication to families and incorporating both the compliments and the complaints that we've been receiving in this operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments from members? Again, Ms. Charlesworth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to receive compliments. It tells you what we're doing well. But I think complaints actually, as you've mentioned, have been a driver for change and improving service delivery. What I would have found useful is for a few case studies to be in here, and just to get a background of what's happened and how it's been remedied in particular. I mean, completely anonymised, of course. And on the Ombudsman, I know that there's been no public reports, but the 11 cases where there was an issue, is it possible for members to see the report the Ombudsman did for them?
So the Ombudsman does publish information on its website. I will check in with the team and then I'll come back to you with that information, if that's okay.
It would be useful, because I know at District we've had a couple of cases with the Ombudsman and we get a report, it's anonymised again, but we get a full report of exactly what's happened, why it's happened and what the remedy has been. Thank you.
Miss Taylor, thank you.
Just a comment, really, thank you for that. You were mentioning lots of changes to the report and that things were incorrect, and it's quite difficult to follow. I don't know if anyone else, but I was finding it really difficult to follow. So we're sort of scrutinising a report that I can't really follow because of all the changes. Is there any particular reason why there were so many changes and incorrect information in here?
I think it was just down to human error. Jeez.
What we'll do is we'll make sure that in the minutes it's really clear what the changes are, because I know it was difficult to follow in terms of the, so apologies for that. But we'll make sure that in the minutes, I mean, Damien will do a brilliant job at just making sure that we're really clear that the main errors were around numbers and changes in numbers. But apologies, it wasn't clear for members as we were going through it. But we'll make sure in the minutes we're really clear about those figures and where the changes are as well. So yeah, apologies. And Mr. Charles, was just on your question around case studies. I think you're right. Case studies always bring alive, don't they, some of the things that we're worried about. And so we can have a look at it because it's a statutory report. It might not be possible to do it within the statutory report, but we can think about how we bring case studies around things that have gone wrong and what we've learned and what we've done as well. So we will take that point away. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always helpful to bring cases alive, isn't it, so that we can really understand what's gone on. But yeah, thank you. And we'll have a look at it either as an addendum or addition to the report. Thank you.
Mr. Page.
I just want to add to what Mr. Charlesworth said. I mean, I've sat on gateway panels with Treasury, and one of the things that we do is we go back into those programs and we actually say, so when we came last time, we recommended this. What have you done? So I think the whole purpose of having a case study plus the actions in detail is essential for public confidence, actually, in the services that we're providing. It's not just about your services, but it could go across a range of public services. The other thing I wanted to ask was the response rate, 58%. How does that sit? 58% is the response rate within 20 days, is that right?
There's a number of factors that can reflect how long it takes to respond to a complaint. I suppose one of the sort of the typical factors are sort of the nature of it and the complexity of it in terms of how long we need to do the work, or like I said, it could be in terms of availability of individuals and of the complainant themselves in terms of availability to have in-person meetings.
It does sound like an extraordinary amount of time, though. If only 58% of those, what happens to the complainant in that time? How are we managing? We do
keep in regular contact with them, and we do advise them of any changes to anything they would have been previously told, so that there is a constant dialogue with that individual, and they are informed of any delays or changes to times, etc., or they are part of the conversation in terms of agreeing when to have meetings.
One last question, please, Chair. Do we do CSAT kind of surveys? I mean, you talk about compliments. I think that's really important to get a sense of the value of service that people feel for what they get. And it's difficult, isn't it? You're not expected to provide any information that's positive in that sense. So do we do CSAT surveys?
I don't know whether I understand what CSAT surveys are, but let me tell you what we do, and then you can tell me if it's a CSAT survey. So we, throughout our work with families, we will constantly seek feedback around what's worked, what the impact's been, how things can improve. So the complaints is one area of, kind of constant learning about where we've got things wrong and what we need to change. But actually, as part of our casework with our families, we would seek feedback at the end of intervention through a variety of means. So some teams do surveys, others have conversations, but as well as that, we are really focused on making sure the voice of families and children comes throughout our intervention as well. So there are regular touch points where we are seeking feedback. And all of that's built into our, so for this area of the world, our continuous improvement plan, which is constantly contributing to us as a learning organisation around how do we make things better for children, how do we improve services, how do we learn from where we've made mistakes, all of those kind of things. So there are regular touch points in many different ways with our service users, or the people for whom we are responsible, to make sure that we're not only hearing what they're saying about what's good about what we've done, but actually where we've not got it wrong as well. So yeah, lots and lots of touch points that feed into our continuous improvement plan.
So yeah, customer satisfaction surveys. And I guess what it is, in a corporate world, you probably have a target as an organisation to achieve a certain CSAT survey. In fact, whole bonuses are dependent on those sorts of things in the corporate world, which is frightening. But the point about that, though, is that it enables you to take the rough with the smooth, but overall, as a portfolio, as a service, you're actually able to hold a rating, a grading within your organisation, and it's an objective to achieve that next year. Let's get a 2% increase. What do we need to do to achieve that? That's the kind of motivation behind it.
Yeah, so that's really helpful. So obviously we're not measured in the same way in the public sector, nor do we get bonuses within the public sector. However, we do have we have other regulatory. So Ofsted visited us a year ago and deemed us to be outstanding. So it's a similar kind of thing where we are in a number of our areas graded for our performance on a number of things. And I guess for us the important bit is that we are seeking feedback from what our service users say in order to improve our services, and we do that on a regular basis as well, but probably not in the same way as we would do in the private sector.
Perfect. If there's no further questions or comments, thank you so much. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us and talking through that. We'll move on now to item 10, which is a report on children in need of help and protection. That's on pages 75 to 82. Sharon Cook, Assistant Director of Targeted Early Help and Children's Social Care, will present the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. Yeah, the report that's before you and the purpose of the report is to provide you as a committee with an overview of the work that we do within the department in relation to children who are deemed to be children in need and children in need of protection. It outlines our statutory duties and responsibilities to those children, and the report goes on in paragraph 2 to tell you and outline the policy framework in which we operate and ensure that the local authority meets all its duties and responsibilities to this group of children. Fundamentally, they are within the duties of the Children Act of 1989, but you will see that there is a plethora of legislation that we adhere to and need to be responsible for. The paragraph 3 onwards gives you the detail of some of that legislation and also details working together to safeguard children. So that is the publication that we are bound to work to for those vulnerable children who are in need of safeguarding and protection, and it outlines the duties not only of the local authority and the actions we need to take, it's the actions we need to take with our safeguarding partners. So they are the key legislation that we work to. So background is that in February 2024, after a long period of piloting a new way of working and with a keen eye on what was the government review on stable homes built on love, we moved to a model within children's social care and targeted what was then targeted early help into a model around family help and family safeguarding. Interestingly and positively, the local authority was at the forefront of developments and work around family help, and the Family First Partnership, Family First programme rather, that is currently looking and charging local authorities to look at a whole system reform to how we deliver children's social care along with our partner agencies, is based on a model that includes family help and based very much on how we increase and improve preventative services for children and families. So that understanding that I'm sure we all share, that for majority of children, the best place for them to grow up and feel cared and loved for is within their family, their immediate family, and if not their immediate family, their extended family. And that we should provide and develop services to support families to succeed with that. But for those few children where it's not safe for them to be at home and with their family, that the local authority as corporate parent is charged with making sure that we provide that same level of care, sense of belonging and security to those children that come into our care. So the rest of the report outlines the key services and parts of our service that actually are at the forefront of delivering those services to children in need and children in need of protection. So paragraph 8 to 10 takes you through the work of our first response teams. That's the front door into the service. It provides you with the detail of how that service is structured into a screening, intake part of the service to the assessment. So those children and families that are deemed to require a service from us, how we complete those assessments to determine how best we meet that level of need. There is 11 to 14 gives you some detail on some of the performance around referrals, re-referrals, strategy discussions. So that is when a child's deemed or believed to be at risk and there is a concern, the local authority, along with the police, health partners and the appropriate education partner, will meet to share information about the family, about the child, about the circumstances of the concern, and determine whether the threshold is met for us to complete a Section 47 investigation. We then go on to, in paragraph 17 to 20, give you the detail of our family help model. As I say, that's placed us in a really strong position as a local authority in delivering the government's agenda of the Family First programme, and links to the review of keeping children safe, helping families thrive. It talks about the establishments of the team. We've based them in our localities. They are focused social work teams who are working alongside alternatively qualified and experienced staff who were part of our targeted family help service, to make sure that the right person, right level of people with the right skill set are working with those children and families. And we've had in the now well over 12 months of that model working, some really positive outcomes and improvements and feedback, not only from families but from partner agencies, about the improvement of those services to children in need. Paragraph 21 onwards takes you through the structure of those teams, and some of the areas that are listed in 24 to 26 are some of the specialist parts of that service, and some of the things that the local authority deliver on. Paragraph 29 onwards then takes you into our family safeguarding teams. So when a child is deemed to require a child protection plan, a multi-agency child protection plan for services to work alongside that family and child to ensure that they're safe, and to safety plan with that family and extended family members to ensure that a child is safe and the right services are in there to minimise the risk that's been identified. Those children are supported in our family safeguarding teams that are social work teams. Paragraph 31 explains for the committee the public law outline, which is the structure and framework that we work within if we are concerned enough about a child to consider whether the local authority needs to take legal intervention in the life of that child. So there is a pre-part of that framework where parents are really clear about what the concerns are. Agencies come together to provide a level of support. For some children, that support enables the risk to be minimised and they step down, but for some children it leads to us going into court to ask a judge for them to consider making an order where the local authority would share parental responsibility for that child. Paragraph 37 onwards outlines the work of the Disabled Children's Service. So that is a county-wide service. It is unique in that that team will support children right from the assessment stage right the way through. So if they are children in need, if they become children in need of protection, and actually if they become children in care, if the predominant issues and needs are around disability and complex health needs, then the disabled children's team will stay with that child and family throughout that process. They don't move within and across teams, but the team works very closely as part of the wider service to ensure that all the developments, all the resources that are available to any child are available to that group of children. So I hope the report gives you an overview of our statutory duties and responsibilities to this group of children, outlines how the service is structured to meet those duties, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pugsley.
Nothing further to add beyond the report, Chair. It's a vital and complex work, but it's really important in ensuring that we get the right support in at the right time. So it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member questions. Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's quite difficult sitting here because I was part of the leadership team when this was brought in and implemented, and I've seen firsthand how it works on the front line. So it's very hard to scrutinise now, but it's good to see that it's working well. It is the direction that the government's now wanting us to go, and yeah, I'm really pleased to see that it has working really well. So yeah, let's hope it continues and the children get the right support at the right time. Thank you.
Yeah, and I echo that. I think the offer is amazing, and it is the way it's sectioned out. I think it really does cover every eventuality, and I think that's so important when it is complex needs at stake. So yeah, congratulations for the work done on that. If there's no further questions, oh, there you go. Sorry, apologies. Yes,
not at all.
Thank you.
Not at all, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sharon, for this report. It is really helpful, and I think it's particularly responsive to a question I asked at a previous scrutiny. So I really appreciate officer time taken to set this out. My question then and is now relates mainly to access to the disability service. This is something that schools have raised with me as a question mark for them. Questions about how they can work to access the disability service, where there may not be necessarily concerns about children and family from a safeguarding perspective, but actually recognising that that particular child has long-term significant complex needs, and how how the schools can work with the family and social care to get the support in place that the families need for children to not just survive but thrive in their home environments. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The family or another professional can make a referral in relation to any child to our front door, so into first response. For children with a disability, we have an additional responsibility to ensure that their needs as a disabled child and young person are thoroughly assessed, and that the right services to support that child and family are put into place. Those services could come from our social care disabled team. It could come from our targeted family help team, who do provide a lot of additional services to families and young people. But the determination about which service is provided would be part of the assessment, and other professionals and the family would be involved in those assessments. So the first port of call, if they're not already known to us, would be to the front door, to first response, and they would appropriately identify those needs and ensure that the rights assessments are completed.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Thank you very much. I was just saying, and to Damien, I think a lot of the comments, not just in this scrutiny committee, but in lots of them and in lots of meetings, is around communication and around how we make sure, because there's lots of good work being done. I think there's often an accusation that councils don't do anything good, but actually there's lots of good work, and I think we're all seeing that firsthand. And I do wonder if there's a work group or some sort of scheme of work conjoined that we can do around communication, because if no one knows about it, what's the point of actually putting it in place and doing the good work you did previously? I'd like to see something on that someday. Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or comments, I'd like to move on to item 11, and that's the Leicestershire Music Overview Report, which is 83 to 88 in your report pack. Tim Brown, Assistant Director of Education, Send and Inclusion, and I think there's three, good. Ted Walker, Head of Strategy, Education and Sufficiency, and Sarah Barton, Service Manager of Leicestershire Music and Strategic Lead for Hub Lead Organisation will present the item. That was a lot. Thank you very much. Present when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to inform the committee about the work of Leicestershire Music. And it's worth saying that Leicestershire Music is grant funded to the tune of 1.47 million, no pun intended, as an increased margin over the last few years. So it is a challenging area of work. But the service is really committed to providing an inclusive, diverse and engaging music education, recognising the fact that music plays a vital role in creation and developing cognitive skills and social connections with overall well-being. And I know Sarah's been doing a lot of work around that, and we'll talk you through the details of the report in more detail.
Share microphones. Yeah, so I will just kind of talk you through the report and highlight anything in particular rather than read everything out, because you can do that for yourselves. So for those of you that aren't aware of Leicestershire Music, as Tim referred to, we are a grant funded service. So that money comes from the DFE directly, and it's channeled through the Arts Council England, who kind of oversee our work. We are the oldest music service in England. We've been around for over 75 years now. And about just over a year ago, we were given the role of the Hub Lead Organisation. So there are 42 music hubs in England around. We oversee Leicester City and Leicestershire. And our role there is to deliver the National Plan for Music Education, but also oversee any of the organisations within the city and the county who deliver music education. And that may be commissioning them to deliver some of the national plan, or it might just be checking in with them about what they're offering and making sure that that's high quality. We have a central workforce, so there's about 40 of us in total. About 30 of those people are out on the ground delivering in schools within term time. So yes, as mentioned, we have 2 grants. So we have our core funding, our revenue funding is 1.47 million. This year only, we received an additional capital grant via DFE to purchase musical instruments, and that purchase was based on need that was given to us from schools, from partner organisations, from young people. So some of those purchases will have been things like higher quality instruments so that we can hire out to those children who are getting to a higher level in their music playing, or adaptive instruments for SEND pupils who would like to play a musical instrument but need a specialist instrument to be able to do that. I guess, yeah, one of the key things to highlight is that the funding allocation hasn't really increased in about 10 years. In real terms, that's approximately 20% down. So we've got a big challenge from our funders to be able to match fund a lot of that by raising money via grant giving, through applying for donations and things through perhaps our alumni, which is a scheme we're looking to build up. But that is a challenge. Some music hubs around the country are established charities within their own right, so that makes applying for grant funding a lot easier. Leicestershire Music is still obviously associated with a local authority, so some grants aren't accessible to us. So that's an ongoing challenge that we have to think about. In terms of delivery, and our alignment kind of with children and families, inclusion and SEND is a big part of our work. We currently work with all of the SEND schools in the city and the county. We have a SEND specific music curriculum, which the schools use, but we also sell that product as a traded item out to other schools because it's of a particular high quality. We were successful in getting some funding through Youth Music for a project called Uprising, which is where we train specialist teachers to be able to deliver music within SEND settings because it's a very particular skill. We're really interested, and this is something that we noticed when we did a needs analysis with our wider kind of partnership, is around wellbeing and personal development, using music for those things. Obviously, we are always championing music for its own sake, but obviously its benefits around preventative measures with mental health and wellbeing are really, really big. And we're just about to pilot, as Tim mentioned earlier, an inclusion project within AP settings within schools. So that project will start with a small number of secondary schools, but we'll be looking at how we can use music with those young people in schools in the setting that they're already in, rather than them being kind of sent out to alternative provision. And we'll be running a research project alongside that to see what the real impact is on those young people and if it can help integrate them back into the classroom. So we can let you know how that goes. And lots of work with partners. So doing work with national organisations. So the Philharmonic Orchestra have a residency in Leicester. National Youth Jazz Orchestra are based in Leicester now as well. So lots of organisations that we're able to work in partnership with to make sure that young people are accessing cultural activity. So not only are they learning the music, but they're also experiencing live music as well, which is something that schools fed back to us. We were challenged a couple of years ago with a revision of the National Plan for Music Education to deliver kind of from birth to careers, which is quite a big ask with no extra money. But careers is something that we've done a lot of work with, and actually Leicestershire has been put on the map as leading the way with that. So there is something called the Leicester Music Board, and they've worked really hard to build a connection between the music industry and music education, so that those young people, when they finish their musical learning at 18, aren't just left to kind of find their way into a career which has a million different options. So there's lots of work going around there in terms of helping schools understand the careers options for young people who want to work in music, but also helping young people where they're going to their careers advisor within school and not being able to get expertise advice. So there will be an annual music careers conference designed especially for young people that will take place next year, and we did our first one this year in February. Some of the data just to highlight is we work above average with the number of schools that we work with. And that's in a number of ways. It might be that we physically send in a specialist to deliver the music, or it may be that we're training the teachers to feel more confident in delivering music, especially in primary schools where there's not often a music specialist. Lots of our schools take part in lots of the singing we do. And over the last few years, we've worked really hard to be better at not only gathering the data, but also making sure that children who are free school meals, special educational needs or pupil premium are accessing our activity. So that's been a lot of work around working with those schools and making sure what we do is inclusive. We also do some pretty exciting stuff. Took them on tour this year to Belgium, was the first one we've done since pre-COVID, which is pretty exciting development. Taking them to the youth proms at the Albert Hall, performed at De Montfort University, played alongside the Philharmonic Orchestra, and performed at Leicester's Riverside Festival this year. So lots of exciting opportunities for young people to get involved inside and outside of school. Yeah, key challenges I've already mentioned, the funding and the difficulties we've been able to apply for additional funding. And I guess the biggest one really is where music is placed in kind of the value system in people's lives. It's a pretty expensive hobby, and it continues to be. Whilst we'd like to be able to support as many young people as possible to access those lessons, it's increasingly a challenge for parents to prioritise that. So we do see a lot of young people start and then drop out. And that wasn't helped with kind of the COVID dip, where live music and playing an instrument was pretty much impossible. As of this Saturday coming, we will take up residency in the Haymarket Theatre in the city. For those of you that are Leicester born and bred, you'll know that that's a building that holds quite a lot of special memories for people. So it hopefully will help us raise our awareness. So I still come across people who don't know we exist, which is something that I've really tried to work really hard on this year, is that advocacy, because the more people that know about us, the more people might want to support us, whether that's financially or just physically coming down and giving us a hand. And a biggest part of our work that brings in income is something called classroom instrumental learning, which is where we teach groups of young children of about 30 at a time. It's not for the faint-hearted. And we're looking to change that model, whereas currently we couldn't physically go into all of the primary and secondary schools in the city and county and deliver 45 minutes of whole class learning in a week. Because we don't have enough people, it's a very expensive model. So we're looking to do something where we work with less schools more strategically, and we build up relationships with them. So a musician in residence style programme where they'll get someone working within their school for a half or a whole day, which is a big investment from schools, but it will be subsidised by us. And it will hopefully lead to better progression. So our ultimate goal really is for those children that get involved in music, who have the opportunity to experience it, can also continue with that journey if they want to, because it's really important that we don't just go in and do something and then leave. I think that's all the things to highlight. Any questions, please?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Miss Taylor.
I'll try and curb my enthusiasm, but thank you, Sarah. Good to see you again. I can't gush enough about this service, how wonderful it is, and how many evenings I've enjoyed listening to Leicestershire music as well. I think what you're saying about the added value, I see that firsthand, the friendships of different groups of children that probably wouldn't have met otherwise, but are joined together by music and that wellbeing and mental health. So I think it's a lot wider than playing a musical instrument, but you see that discipline as well. And the staff that you have working for are just absolutely fantastic. You see how much they give to the children. It's far above what they're paid to do. So it's fantastic. I suppose my question is, and to change the tone, is that in the key challenges in paragraph 16 is the unfunded local government pay award, which is going to add 120k to the salaries of the service. And it's just how you're going to try and absorb that without taking anything away from what you deliver for children across Leicester and Leicestershire.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. It is a really good. Firstly, thank you for your support over the years. It is a really good question. We did do a restructure about a year ago now. We had a teaching team who were teaching for 42 weeks of the year, but only delivering for 30 weeks of the year and delivering, getting paid sort of 5 p.m. But actually, we're only delivering term time only till 3. So that the kind of pay for those teachers has been reduced quite significantly to help try and counteract that. But obviously, this is a problem that will occur for us every year if that core funding doesn't increase. But the pay award has to come out of that funding. It is something that we have to counteract all the time. This year, it will be that we probably give less money to our partner organisations to help cover that. And actually, our role as the hub lead organisation is to make sure that we are making that offer as inclusive as possible. So by not giving it to a specialist organisation that only work with, for example, looked after children, it means that there may be a group of children who aren't getting what they were getting before. So yeah, it's a balancing act and a challenge. We also introduced within the restructure a business development manager. So their core role is to think about other ways that we can bring in funding. Yeah, last year our sponsorship from PPL PRS, so the performing rights licensing business that's now based in Leicester, funded our concert series at De Montfort Hall. So opportunities like that hopefully will help counteract a little bit.
And hopefully I'll get to one of your concerts in the future.
You're all welcome.
Yeah, and this doesn't come to scrutiny very often, and I think it probably because you just said about the work that we do, we need to highlight that. And this is one of the fantastic services that we offer for Leicester and Leicestershire children. So is it possible just to have an annual report every year or something? I think this should just come to scrutiny a bit more if that's possible, Chair.
And I would fully back that. And I think as well, I've got some comments because I think equally as passionate. We could have a duet. But I think what's important actually.
Actually, we're going to sing now. Did no one put that on the agenda?
I'm very for that. But I think it does need to come more regularly. And I think these are the stories we should be hearing more of collectively, not just in music, but I'm sure there's examples throughout the council. And also, please do send out the invites to these concerts because, you know, we might be able to send one in the year, but I'm sure there's opportunities where you might get all of those at some point. And I think the more, this isn't a service I don't think you can read about and appreciate. And I think you've seen them in action, you can actually appreciate it. So please send out the invite. I was an alumni, I said it earlier. I was one of the choir children at Eastfield when I was at primary school in Thurmaston. So there you go. You know, it changed my life. I went to the Royal Academy of Music eventually. So this is my progression, and it started in doing choirs and started to do school. So I'm passionate about this, and I think it's so important. It's been spoken about the benefit of creativity, and it's been spoken about the way it expands. I'm dyslexic. Actually, music was my access into academia because it helps. If you can read music, actually it helps in other functions as well. So there's huge benefits. I am going to change tact again, and I talked about this earlier in the chair's briefing. I know my children's school, both of them, secondary and primary, don't actually, well, they might use it, but they have private lessons done by a private company. And I think that's such a shame when you hear the good work that's being done, that we are not getting into every single school and saying, don't pay those fees, come to us. Because I guess, like we heard earlier, it's potentially equitable, if not slightly cheaper, maybe even. I don't know how it works, but, you know, I would love to know about the work, how we're trying to prize away business from private companies and bring it back into the council when you're doing such good work. So that would be my question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. Until 2 years ago, we didn't have a peripatetic team. So we were teaching whole class music, but no one-to-one and small group. And that was all done by freelancers. We would have to have an extraordinarily large team of employees to deliver music in that way in every. So we do work closely with those peris. So we did our safeguarding training this week here, and we invited those in that needed it. And I think that's our role as hub lead organisation, is to balance Leicestershire Music as a business versus kind of making sure that everybody's served, because we couldn't do it without those freelancers as well. But in the last couple of years, we have built up that side of the business to the point where it's just about to break even. And that is kind of getting the demand versus the supply of the teachers right. So we don't want to get a whole team of teachers in if that work isn't readily available to take off the peris, and maintaining that relationship with them as well, because they are also the ones who recommend that their young people join our orchestras and bands on a Saturday, for example, where they come and pay membership. So I think it's, maintaining a good relationship with those people, because it's an ecosystem and we're all part of the same one, but also making sure that, where there's business to be had, that we're ready to take it. And things like being able to recruit on a casual basis, because often music is kind of project led, or you never quite know what the demand is going to be from parents and families next year. And that's something that with the help of TED this year, we've managed to get through a contract where we can actually employ more freelancers to do that, because we need that flexibility. And that's often a challenge, getting that contract right within local authority. So good question.
Yeah, thanks. Just on the back of the request around an annual report, we can certainly do that. And also we can extend the invite to our concerts to members of Children, Families, Overview and Scrutiny, because they are well worth attending and happen throughout the year. So we'll make sure that you're included on our mailing list for invite, and we can bring certainly an annual report, maybe some music next time as well.
Any further questions? Yes, Ms. Prensbury.
Really, just a comment. I've recently been involved in some inter-schools music in Hinckley. I hasten to add, I didn't sing. Nobody would ever pay me to sing, unlike Mark. And to see the difference in one particular child who I know personally, who is shy, very withdrawn, won't say boo to a goose, watching her stand on stage playing the tin pans loudly and enthusiastically was incredible. So the value is amazing. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to the service as a whole, because this is, I think, a shining example of what good looks like. So well done. Thank you. Now we move on to item 12, which is the Q1 25-26 performance report on pages 89 to 100. Sharon Cook, Assistant Director for Targeted Early Help and Children's Social Care, and Tim Brown, Assistant Director for Education, Send and Inclusion, will present this item. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll start. So this is a regular report that members will be aware we present at every overview and scrutiny for the quarter reporting period subsequent to coming to the meeting. So this relates to the period April to June of this year and is Q1 data. The report, as always, outlines at the beginning of the report the framework in which we report on the data and those indicators and key indicators that are measured nationally, and those things that are set by ourselves as a local authority around our performance and planning. Dealing with the children in need of help and protection, so paragraph 8 down to 15, this outlines pleasingly the progress that's being made, particularly in relation to the children who have become subject to a child protection plan for a second or subsequent time. So you'll note that, and I'm sure remember and recall the work that we do focused on this area of work, and we're seeing that percentage reducing and being more in line with what we'd expect it to be, linked to those links to statistical neighbours, the England average, and we measure ourselves against outstanding authorities as well. It looks at the percentage of re-referrals, which again is the percentage is reducing, and a reduction is a good thing. And we are very near to the percentage that we would expect from any local authority, that number of re-referrals. Assessments completed in 45 days, there's been a slight reduction in that percentage. I can report that we focus on this area of work, and the overall percentage currently is higher. So although there was a slight decrease there, that is no longer the case in the performance data. Our performance around our children, our care leavers, is again very positive performance. I can report that around those children with dental checks, that slight decrease has been explored. So that's about access to NHS dentists. It's also around older young people needing to be persuaded more about taking up that dental visits. But again, it is this performance data is overseen in monthly meetings chaired by heads of service, and then a monthly performance meeting that is chaired by myself. So I can say that that percentage as we currently stand is much higher. So we're addressing that. And similarly for those children with their health assessments, that's been around some older children refusing. There has been an issue around some availability in a period of time from health to provide those appointments, and we hit a period where we had some carers who were away, so there was a delay in taking up those appointments. So there's a mixture, but again that is closely monitored and currently stands much higher, and we work very hard with our colleagues in health to ensure that those things take place. So I think from the main report, they are the key areas for myself. So if I hand over to Tim to take you through the education part, and then obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sharon. So just picking up from paragraph 18, where we're talking around numbers of education, help and care plans. I think we've rehearsed a lot of that during the course of the meeting today. We're probably around 3 years ahead of where we thought we'd be in the original projections with numbers. So we'll easily reach 8,500 EHCPs this year, given the huge growth in demand. On the good news, though, we've seen an increase in the numbers of children and people with EHCPs being educated in mainstream schools, as we talked about earlier. So that's gone from 42% to 51% this year. So that's a really good news story. We're meeting those children's needs in a sustainable way, and actually their outcomes are really, really positive and strong, which is great. Just moving on, early years. Early years is, I think, a challenge at the moment across the country because of the sufficiency issues and the hourly rate that providers receive. And the government has just introduced the expansion of the childcare offer, which started this September as well. So we'll monitor that very closely. And just moving on to the percentage of children and people in good or outstanding school. That's how we measure the quality of the education often that children are receiving. And again, there's been some improvement there, although we are still slightly below the national. So there's more work to be done there as well as we move forward. But it is quite changeable based on the size of the school and the Ofsted inspections. And of course, Ofsted inspections have been paused at the current time, and they'll be restarting very shortly. So some of those inspection judgments have been there longer than we would have expected, but that will start to shift come October when the new inspection framework is introduced, which I'm sure will introduce some challenges in itself. Just touching briefly on admissions, a really good news story. The numbers of children and people receiving their first choice, both at primary and secondary schools, continues to rise, which is really positive. And our place planning side of the business is reflected in that we are doing the right places in the right areas at the right time. But we are going to see a significant shift in the overall school population over the next few years, and a huge growth across the county, which will be challenging because we also find some areas where there will be a reduction in numbers and the viability of schools will come into question, but other areas where we need to expand quite significantly. So we're looking at building a number of new schools over the next, I think 40 new schools over the next 15 years is currently projected. So it's a really significant programme there, but really positive. I think probably that's all I wanted to highlight at this point, so I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pugsley.
Thank you. Nothing further to add beyond the report, Chair. It is good to see certain things, though, such as the number of children who have been suspended this academic year that we're talking about here compared to the previous having decreased. So it's good to see things such as that.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members? Yes, sorry, Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the need for an increasing number of schools, but we keep on being told the birth rate is falling and we've got an ageing population. There seems to be a dichotomy there.
Yeah, no, really good point. The birth rate has fallen. So we've seen the peak in primary, now move into secondary, and that secondary cohort will move through into post-16. So we'll have a capacity issue post-16 very shortly. But most of the additional capacity we need is through building programmes across the county. So we're having to respond to the increased demand that will create. And we'll make sure we are building that capacity using developer contributions so that the burden doesn't fall on the council's capital budget as well.
Sorry, I didn't see where the increased demand was coming from.
Sorry, I wasn't clear. It's through development, so new house building programmes across the county bring new children into those houses, and those children will need to have local schools available to them.
So is it safe then to assume that there will be other counties where the school population will be equally falling?
Nationally, the population in primary has fallen, but that cohort is now will go through into secondary, which will cause secondary populations to fall as well. But it does depend on the building programmes and the development proposals and the local plans, essentially, to increase housing capacity to the extent to which those counties will need to build additional schools to accommodate those houses.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Excellent news that we're building more houses. Is it possible to have upfront information on where they're going to be built? I'm personally aware of people being transferred by buses to other schools. Therefore, the children they play with are not in their locale. So for me and my constituents, it would be good advice, that I can feed back that the schools are coming and transport and friends disappearing will be resolved. Brilliant.
Yeah, so all that information is available within the local plans that are submitted by the districts, but what we'll be doing at a county level is consulting on our new school places strategy later in the autumn, so that will have a lot of the detail in there as well.
Just to add to that as well, and we do need to programme them in, but we over the past many years we've done local briefings for members as well. So Tim and I'll just go back and check when those are due, because that will just give you the kind of local information around pupil forecast numbers, place availability, school build at a local level as well. So we'll go away and just check when those are due to be booked in. We know we do them at a certain time of year, and we haven't done them. I think we're due them very soon, so we'll go back and just double check when those are going to happen, and then we'll invite local members to come along and we'll present on the school place issue, because you'll be able to understand in a little bit more detail then the impact of the housing growth on school population for your area as well. But we'll just check on that.
There you go. I think that's really important. Being a district or borough councillor, obviously you're involved in the local plans. You understand the incredible amount of house building that's expected of all of us. But one question that gets asked a lot as a borough councillor is around placement for children in schools, and I know where I am there is capacity, but seemingly there isn't capacity at the same time, and there's this contra argument always. And I'm also involved in a neighbourhood plan, which is that lower level, and it's one of the most complicated issues because it's undescribable sometimes. There is capacity, there isn't capacity, but in certain years there is, but in other years there isn't. So I think any help being able to share that message in a really, I guess, concise way without that complication would be really beneficial. So thank you for doing that, Mr. Page.
Yeah, look, in that regard, in Harbour District, as you know, the local plan's actually gone past its sell-by date, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's still critically important. But what we're getting is speculative applications, and they're of size. We're talking 2,000 here, 1,000 there. How do you cope with the planning arrangements around such things? Because one of the biggest criticisms we've got is the lack of thought through infrastructure to support all of those things, including schools. And my second point to this would be that my preference, particularly in an area like Harborough, certainly Market Harbour itself, would be that we invest in the two great schools, secondary schools that we've got there. There's certainly a big enough footprint to allow further expansion. And you've got another school in Kibworth, which has also done extremely well from prior years. I'd like to see that Section 106 money is prioritised on existing and distributed fairly to other schools, smaller schools, in the support of the catchment to those senior schools as well. So, sorry, I don't know whether you understand the question.
No, great question. So it's really quite complicated because we find that developers would rather have brand new schools because it sells houses, whereas we are keen to expand existing provision where at all possible because it creates greater sustainability for that local community. And inevitably it will be a mix of the two by and large. But when you're building a new secondary school, it is really significant. So you'll be talking around a minimum of 900 places, and you'll be looking at £24 million to build a 900 place secondary school, for example. So we will look to do that as effectively as possible and take into account the entire school ecosystem, because the last thing we want to do is build a school in a particular area which will then cause viability issues for other schools as well. And the other thing I should say as well is that there's been a lot of historical building one form entry schools, and they're very, very small and they're just not viable anymore. So we'll always look to build a minimum of 2 form entries, preferably 3 actually, and we'll look to make sure that even if we don't open it fully at that size, the infrastructure and the core, the corridors, the classrooms are all there so that we can expand at the right time. To making sure again that we don't expand too quickly, because you end up with the problem that you've talked about, is children going out of their community to schools, which again is not great for anybody. So our general principle is local schools for local children wherever possible, and that builds that belonging we talked about earlier, and that's critical. We've also looked at our developer contribution arrangements as well, so that's just been reviewed because our feeling was that developers weren't paying us enough money, and our research has been very clear that has been the case. Some of that's because we've had a historical problem around the inflationary pressures, because we got 106 7 years ago, and the inflationary building pressures have been really significant. So that's created a bit of a shortfall, but we have realigned all of that now. So I'm really confident.
Just on that, if I may, Chair, the monitoring of Section 106 money is absolutely critical. We've got several situations where there is potential of Section 106 money being handed back because it wasn't spent in the appropriate period as well. And I don't understand the relationship between yourselves and the districts and how the Section 106 money is divvied up and monitored. Certainly districts have their own monitoring capacity, or don't, but should. And I know that you guys do. Is that right? You
yes,
do.
Yes.
So how does that work?
So we monitor when a Section 106 agreement's drawn up. It's specified about what the purposes of that funding can be spent on, by who, and which areas. As a county, we like to have it as loose as possible. Developers like to have it as tight as possible, because for that very reason, that then you have to repay the money. We make sure that it's loose enough so that we can spend it in the right way at the right time. And we also can use it to forward fund projects where we need to as well. But we keep a very close eye on it. And when and I chair a meeting, a capital meeting, which reviews all of the capital spend and the Section 106 spend and when it's due, to make sure we don't end up in a situation where we're having to repay it.
Okay, just one last question on that then. Can I ask that you, when you are asked to comment on planning applications, and when you're aware that they're particularly speculative, and I hope that is something you are aware of, that you are quite terse with the developers in their proposal and demanding, because if those things aren't satisfied properly, then we'll always be sold short. And so it's absolutely critical that if district doesn't do it because of fear of going to inspector or whatever, that the county actually does hold the line on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really happy to challenge any development that's coming forward that isn't providing enough 106 money, whether it be through the speculative route or whether the district aren't challenging enough. We would certainly want to do that, because otherwise we won't be able to provide the school places that are needed.
Yes, Mrs. Danks.
With more parents choosing to homeschool, is that taken into account when you're looking at planning for other schools?
It is, but the way it works is that we survey. We go at different points in time. We survey areas of the county to get a feel around the numbers of children and people which a development will produce. And that factors into our planning process. But the problem we have with elective home education is we don't receive any funding from central government for those children at all. So that's money essentially lost to the local system per pupil, because children are funded on a per pupil basis from the government. So we're obviously keen, where possible, for children and people to attend schools, but obviously we support parents' rights to home educate where they feel that's right for their particular child.
Yeah. No. It's on. Right. So if it's, people deciding to homeschool, perhaps we need to look at why they're deciding to do that. Is that being done?
Yes, we do monitor it very closely. There's been a slight rise, particularly since COVID, actually. So there's been philosophical choices to do that, but also some parents are still worried about sending their children back to school post-COVID. Nationally, there's been a rise as well, but it's something we do monitor particularly. And lots of families choose to do it because it's right for them. Others do it because they don't feel the school system can meet their child's needs for whatever reason. But we will always have that discussion with parents who are opting for home education when we are in discussions with them on an annual basis.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah, because I've spoke to a few parents that are homeschooling and they feel that what's being taught doesn't align with their values.
Yeah, I mean, just for assurance, really, where a parent makes a decision to electively home educate their children, and they have a right to do that, for exactly some of the reasons you state. We do ask for the reasons, so we do keep a kind of record or summary of the reasons why parents make that decision to take their children out of school and home educate them. And there are a whole variety of different reasons. And as you said, one of them is that their values don't align with the curriculum, or that they have certain views about the way in which the schools are run. There are a whole variety of reasons, but just to assure you, we do ask, and we do kind of keep a record to see what the themes are, so that we can understand why. But is it parental right to do that? And parents are able to make that decision should they wish.
Are those values, are those reasons that the parents give, are they available for us to see?
Yes, so we bring annually, and I'll check when it's due, we bring annually a report on what we call inclusion in schools. And that report details all of the work we do with children who are missing education, electively home educated. And we will include in that report the kind of summary of the reasons why parents are making the decision to home educate their children. So I will just double check where that is on the work plan, but we bring a report kind of annually to this committee on all of that work that we're doing to support children who are not in school for various reasons as a whole. So yes, we will.
Mr. Charlesworth.
It's probably a question you can't answer, actually. In just something over 18 months' time, it's possible my area, which has got a new school planned, will not be part of the county council. 2029, the primary school is due to be built. It's probably a question for the districts, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Can the 106 be changed or altered by the successor authority? Does it jeopardise that school in any way by moving to another place? I won't name it.
So just kind of as a broad example, the sufficiency duty sits with the local authority. So the local authority has a duty to ensure there are sufficient places for children. So local government reorganisation will present challenges in terms of sufficiency, depending on where various lines are drawn. Because it is we can't count sufficiency of schools in areas that are not within the local authority in which we are governing. So wherever the line is drawn for local government reorganisation, we will then need to have a look at what sufficiency looks like for our children within the area that we're left governing. If that makes sense. So that's the sufficiency duty. The 106 is linked to the housing development, not to the local authority. So we would then have to do work on looking at where the Section 106 money goes as well.
Mrs. Taylor.
Very diplomatically answered there, Jane. Well done. Mine is a couple of points, really. The first one, I'll say it's on page 92 because it's paragraph 20, but there's two paragraph 20. So it's the early years one. So it's the take up of the fee for 2-year-olds is quite low to what we would really want it to be, and then also the 3-year-olds is going up a bit, so not as bad as it is. So do we have any reason why the 2-year-olds are not taking up their fee?
So what we've actually got is a problem around there being sufficient childcare places for children with special needs in local areas. Because it's concentrated in one or two areas particularly, so that's caused us a particular issue. But what we're doing in order to address that is we're contacting those parents and working with them to provide alternative placements that they may want to consider as well. We're also looking at how we can make all of our nurseries more inclusive, so we're not just focusing those children with special needs going to specialist nurseries as well, which has become a national issue, but we will address that more locally as well. We do have a social media campaign which started yesterday to encourage parents to check their entitlement, particularly with the expanded offer, and all of our early years workers who have caseloads of children and young people with special needs will work with those families to promote their attendance, and also working through our family hubs as well to look at ways in which we can identify those children and with social care and promote them and make sure they're aware of the offer. Because even now, actually, many families still don't know about the offer. So we need to make sure that we're driving that. And we're also looking at more childminders to take up the free offer and expand their offer as well. But it's a tricky marketplace because we've got so many voluntary private sector providers. And the problem with schools providing it is it's more expensive as well. So with a lower hourly rate, schools struggle to provide it because they have to provide a qualified teacher. Whereas you can actually, if you're a childminder or a private nursery, you don't have to have qualified teachers. You have to have qualified nursery providers, but not qualified teachers.
So I take it that's a job for the lead member then to lobby government about sorting that out then, because that's a real issue for us. So hopefully the lead member can take that. Can I have one more point if possible? Just on paragraph 35 there about the suspensions, and I just, they are still very high, the suspensions in children. It doesn't say whether it's secondary or primary or whether it's lumped all together. But I just wonder what work we're doing with the schools with parents and carers, and what response you're getting from them about having their child suspended, because I know how I'd feel if that was my child getting suspended multiple times. So rather than just working with the children, we're working more with the families and the parents to see what problems there are about why the children might be getting suspended.
Yes, really good point. So what we've recently done is provide an outreach service that goes into the families through our alternative provision providers and looks and works with the child, but also the parents as well, to explore ways in which they can support the child back into school and prevent further suspensions. What I'm really pleased about as well is, though, that we are able to, through our Send Investment Fund, we're expanding that offer to across secondary as well. So that's being launched over the next few months.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Sorry, I thought I'd squeeze in right at the last minute. Yeah, it's just regard to paragraph 30, where we're talking about our NEET children. I read a report the other day, actually, where it says that certain parts of Leicestershire were actually on the rise, and that's it's coming down significantly. But what really put my interest was Northwest Leicestershire, where I live, is going the other way, unfortunately. What are we doing to obviously combat that, and are we promoting from within the schools to encourage more children to stay on into further education and further training? And is this directly linked to children that are potentially getting excluded from school? Is this the cohort that we're seeing not getting into NEET? Thank you.
Thank you. Another great question. So what we know is that at post-16, we have a limited number of pathways for children and young people that don't cater for a broad enough range of need. And as a result of that, we have just appointed a post-16 service manager who will be looking at our post-16 offer across the county, particularly in that area, to see what provision we need, because we need more entry-level courses as well as supported internships and a whole range of different offers, because with the introduction of T-levels, it's not suitable for every child or young person, but it's those who are more vulnerable, who have special needs. We need to look for a slightly different offer, and we're looking to expand our vocational offer as well. So that'll be an exciting bit of work, and absolutely critical as our numbers have peaked in secondary and will start tipping over into post-16 as well.
Thank you very much. And just before we move on, it's not a question, it's more a comment. And I think, and it refers back to the formation of new schools and that one formentary school. I think representing a few of my schools within my borough and my county patch actually are single entry form schools. They're small schools, but they hold a real special place in communities. And I think the work they do is unique and special. I would hate to see those schools be lost simply on a cost initiative, and I think it's really important we keep community at the centre of why schools are there, because they serve a much bigger purpose in education. And we've talked about some of the interventions that are already picked up through schools outside of education, so I think that's a really important thing just to add there. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 13. That's good. Draft Leicestershire and Rutland Safeguarding Children Partnership Yearly Report 24-25, pages 101 to 176. Jane Moore will be presenting this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just very briefly take you through the report. It's setting out for you to seek the views of the committee on the draft yearly report of the Safeguarding Partnership. The Children's Act has set out some specific duties around local authorities and partner organisations to safeguard and promote the welfare of all of children, and this is discharged across Leicestershire and Rutland through the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, and it's a statutory requirement that we publish a report on an annual basis. So the key purpose of the report is to assess the impact of the work undertaken over the previous period, and particularly on the safeguarding outcomes for children, and also evaluates the performance against the priorities that are set out in the business plan. I have appended the yearly report to this cover report as well for your information. Just a few bits to pull out from the report. The safeguarding babies priority does remain in place. It has been in place since 2021. It's a key area of our business and focus as well. And you can see that one of the key pieces of work is the implementation of ICON, which is infant crying is normal, comforting methods can help, and it's okay to walk away and never ever shake a baby. So that approach is continued to be supported through the partnership, as well as safer sleeping risk assessment tools. We've also undertaken numerous training events and range of learning and development resources as well. The Child Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing Business Priority has agreed a good level of assurance, so we're not carrying that over. It'll be moving into business as usual and regular reports. We have included a priority around harm outside the home, and that acknowledges the continued prevalence of this risk and theme for our children, both nationally and locally. And it some of the themes that have come out through the independent inquiry into the children's sexual abuse, and also the Online Safety Act as well, are things that we would be continue to be concerned about for our children, and would want to ensure assurance around the local response to these themes. A priority of belonging has been included in our business plan, and with a particular focus on safeguarding those children who are more at risk as a priority. We are continuing to work on the effective safeguarding of children in independent schools, but we're moving that into our business as usual work, where we continue to monitor independent schools and how they safeguard our children. And then we are continuing to focus on transitional safeguarding as well. So we're asking you to consider the yearly report and make any comments or proposed amendments. It does include a summary of consultation that we've undertaken with our children and their families as well. And you can see that all members of the Safeguarding Children's Partnership and the Independent Scrutiny have had opportunities to contribute and comment. And we are presenting the report to Cabinet for noting on the 12th of September. So any comments would be more than welcomed on the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pugsley.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing too much to add on top of the report. I think the one thing that is worth noting is some of the information in the report really does demonstrate both the scale and the seriousness of safeguarding, and it really does highlight the importance of getting in with that early intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members? Yes, Mr. Page.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is on safeguarding in general. The safeguarding responsibilities of all adults towards children, and it seems to be discussed only in a kind of education health context, and I'm wondering whether or not there's a bigger piece to play for all adults across Leicestershire to realise the responsibility that we all have towards ensuring that children are safe and made to feel safe. Can you just comment on what we're doing to promote that as a concept, and I'll come on to my second question, which is different in a minute.
Yeah, so the statute is around certain groups of adults who are responsible for keeping children safe, and obviously it's just basic public duty. We are, as adults in the community, responsible for children, but the statute only sits with certain organisations and certain individuals, and some of that falls under the necessity to report safeguarding concerns, and some of that report things like your corporate parenting duty as counsellors as well. So there are a range of responsibilities, some of which are set out within working together around the statutory safeguarding partners, some of which are set out as adults in communities who hold positions of responsibility as well. So it's a relatively complex space in which some of it is statutory, some of it is just basic duties. One of the things that we do, and we do this through the safeguarding partnership, is that we regularly remind adults and children to really understand the signs of abuse across our communities, and really that's the communication that we would do. So whilst there aren't any statutory responsibilities to report necessarily, actually what we would want our communities to understand is how to identify children that are at risk, what to do if you've got any worries about children, all of those kind of things. We regularly do campaigns on look out for the signs, for example. And one of the areas, as we've highlighted in this report, is how we support communities to identify those children that are at risk of exploitation and what the signs are to be looking out for children that we would be more than worried about. So there are a number of campaigns that go on, as well as making sure that as a council we are really clear about where those concerns can be reported to as well.
I mean, just as a follow-up to that, I mean, it's just a sense that there's a tendency to blame the agencies after the fact, when in fact we're all complicit in failing to act when we possibly suspect something. Or so it's about just establishing that link more broadly across the community that we've all got a responsibility. Okay, so it's a segue to the next question, which was, can we say categorically that we are unaware of any group-based child sexual exploitation within Leicestershire at this moment?
So as Director of Children's Services with responsibility for children, I would never be able to say categorically that something wasn't happening within the authority. We are confident that we have processes, systems, methods of identification in place to make sure that we are monitoring in the best possible way that we can. So currently there are no investigations, or there are no high profile incidents that are going on around grooming. However, we know that children are at risk in so many different forms. So it would be remiss of me to ever make a statement that I can categorically say that nothing is happening. But what I can say is that we have robust systems, we have robust partnership arrangements in place that are doing their very best to make sure the children are protected and safeguarded. And I think your point around community awareness is a really important one, because as agencies, we can act, and we will take proactive action. We do a lot of work within communities to understand what's going on, all of those kind of things. But it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we are doing our very best for children who live within our communities, and that we are providing the care and love that those children need, including identifying where we are worried about them as well. So I am, I'm confident through our partnership arrangements, we are doing our very best to make sure that where we do identify issues, or where we are able to prevent issues, we are doing so.
Yes, Miss Taylor.
I've got a few points, if I may, Chair. I'll start with the first one, which is on page 119, about the doctors having groups of parents in to the family hubs and hosting sessions there. And they're obviously that was something that I brought up as well, about how we're developing that further. Can you give me any updates on that, whether the family hubs are holding more sessions with GPs going into the family hubs rather than parents having on carers going individually to doctors to discuss worries? Is there any update on that?
I can't provide an update on that, but I do know that we piloted it in a specific area to look at how we engage more closely with GPs in order to prevent some of the kind of unnecessarily referrals to GPs and joint working. What I don't know is how well we've rolled that out, so apologies, but I can ask a question to make sure I understand more broadly how we're rolling that out, because it certainly was a really positive, good initiative.
Thank you. My second of four, so you know where I'm going, page 126. So just looking at the costs of running the partnership, you said there that they've risen, and the shortfall has been made up from reserves. Obviously, that's unsustainable going forward. So is there work taking place about how we can keep the really good partnership going, but remain within cost? So just some more information on that, please.
Yeah, so what we've detailed on pages 125 to 126 is the operated costs, which are partnership contributed, because we have the three statutory partners have a responsibility to ensure that our arrangements are funded. And as you can see from the report, we're currently spending more than our income, but are able to manage that through use of reserves. What we are doing as part of the reforms that have been announced by government, that Sharon outlined briefly in her report earlier, we are looking at the role of the kind of safeguarding partnership arrangements and looking at whether or not we can do that differently in terms of how we operate. So we review the budget on an annual basis, and we look at the costs. But one of the options would be to increase partner contributions potentially if there aren't any changes we can do. But it's something we look at annually. But we are tying the review currently in with the reforms and new requirements as well.
Thank you. On to page 149, going on to 50. There's a paragraph there about focusing on children's diverse cultural and identity needs there, and how ethnicity is considered in our interventions. And there's just a piece in there about supporting that with Leicester has established the Race, Ethnicity and Excellence Forum. So I'd just like to learn a little bit more about that, and also probably get the lead member's view on that, because I know the lead member's come out and said he doesn't sort of support EDI. So I just wonder how those two things picked up, please.
Yeah, so we set up the Race, Ethnicity and Excellence Forum in order to make sure that we were doing the very best for our children from Black, Asian and multi-ethnic backgrounds, in line with some of the either heightened number of children that we see within the child protection system or criminal justice system, or across our systems. And the focus of it is making sure that we are delivering the very best service for all of our children, and predominantly focusing on children with additional special needs as a result of intersectionality or racism or other issues that would affect children and young people. So we set up that forum, which means that people can come along, practitioners can come along with a case to really unpick some of the broader issues around race that will impact children and their safeguarding, because fundamentally our duty is to make sure that all children are safeguarded. There is a report which we do mention in this that was done nationally around where safeguarding was not as good as it could have been because we didn't identify issues of race. Now, some of that was because we didn't hear the voice of children effectively. We weren't looking through the lens of racism. There's a whole raft of issues that meant that children were not adequately safeguarded. So the bottom line for us is making sure that we are doing everything within our gift to make sure that every single child within Leicestershire is safeguarded adequately. And the REEF programme or the forum is about making sure that we're really understanding the impact of culture, of racism, of discrimination and all of those kind of things on our children and how well we safeguard them. So it's all part of our overall duties as well.
Thank you. I think in response to your question, I completely echo what Jane has gone through. In my role as lead member, the most important priority for me is that we safeguard all children, regardless of anything. And I think as Jane has gone into, I suppose the way that I'd put it is apologies. Going back to what Jane has said, I think the most important thing, as I've just said previously, is that all children, regardless of anything, and that's the most important thing to lead member, is essentially that I look for the best interests of all the children that we have, regardless of anything, like some of the things that you've mentioned. In my position as lead member, that's something that when I've got that hat on, as it were, it's not something that really comes into the decision process. As Jane has said, and something that I echo completely, it comes down fundamentally to ensuring that we deliver for all children and that we follow the safeguarding responsibilities that both myself and Jane share.
Thank you. It's good to hear you're supporting it because I'm fully supporting it as well. And just my final point is on 175, just the priorities for 2025-27. I don't know whether that it's not specifically said about child criminal exploitation. We've just spoken about that. Is there a reason why that's not down as a priority within those for 25-27?
Yeah, no, it's really important. It's included in harm outside the home. So what we've done is, rather than being because child criminal exploitation is a key issue, as is sexual exploitation of children. What we wanted to do was make sure we were encompassing any harm outside the home for our children under that. So the detailed plan will make sure that's unpicked, but it's there.
Yeah, can I just come back? It might be worth just putting it in brackets because I think the majority of lay people wouldn't know that harm outside the home included criminal child, and I think that would seem like there's a big gap, so it might be just worth highlighting that. Thank you, Chair.
You, Mrs. Seaton.
Chair. Such a lot of information in here, and most of it I've followed and can see either improvement or something that needs extra work to it. But I'm now looking at a table that's on. Oops, I've blown it up and missed the page out. So it's page 200. And usually you can see whether things have improved over the years or not improved, but I can't get my head around this table that's on there. Children who are under the age of 4. Now, to me, it looks as though the figures are almost the same. But in 2017, I should imagine there was less children under 4 as there are now. And children who attend their reviews and speak for themselves, I'd like to see a comparison of out of. If you're with me, I don't know whether it's improved. I know the figures have improved, 554, and now there's 863 that are talking for themselves, but I don't know how many it's out of. So pardon me if it's somewhere else. So, thank you.
So there are a lot of papers, and you've inadvertently jumped to the next report, Mrs. Seaton. So it's absolutely fine. There are a lot of papers and a lot of tables, so we will hold that question for the next report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and that was very timely because we can move on to that report now. So thank you very much for that segue, like a professionally done. Good. Thank you. And thank you for being patient as well. This is the final item on today's agenda. And this is the Independent Reviewing Officer Service Annual Report 24-25. And this is pages 177 to 218. Sharon Cook, Assistant Director of Targeted Early Help and Children's Social Care, and Holly Martin, the very patient Holly Martin, I should say, well done, Service Manager for Safeguarding and Practice Development, will present this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you. Appreciate the time. The report, this is an annual report now that we provide, and the report before you is the report that takes us up to March of 2025. So we always bring it to this overview and scrutiny report, meeting at this time of year. But just to put into context, we're reporting on March to March, ending March of 2025. So the report outlines that the report to Overview and Scrutiny outlines the legal framework and statutory framework in which the local authority needs to fulfil our duties via independent reviewing officers to have oversight and scrutiny of the care planning for each and every child who's in our care. Reports that the paragraph 4, outlines that the key recommendations in the annual report talk about the key policies and procedures that we need to adhere to. So the role of the IRO supports the department's delivery of our commitments that's set out in our corporate parenting strategy. That strategy, as it's reviewed, and it will be reviewed this year, does come to this meeting for you to have oversight of responsibilities, because elected members are also corporate parents. But the IROs work to that and to our achieving excellence via purposeful practice, which is our continuous improvement plan within the department, and it adheres to our children and families departmental plan. So paragraph 7 to 10 gives you an overview of the statistics. So the number of children in our care as of the 31st of March this year. It gives you the statistics around children's participation in review meetings that remain strong. It talks about health assessments, and we've referenced that earlier in the meeting, and talks about the responsibility and our performance over ensuring that children have long-term planning in place, and we are planning for their permanence and their sense of belonging. So key achievements are noted in 11 to 14. It talks about, as we take every opportunity to talk about, that when Ofsted visited in April 24 and rated as outstanding, as part of that report, they were really pleased on the positive practice of our IRO service in supporting care planning for children. We have a permanent structure and employment of, so we don't have agency IROs, which is a really positive for that continuity for our children. We've increased the use of the My Review booklet, which is a way of helping children capture their voice. So if they don't want to come to a formal meeting, or they don't want to come to all of a formal meeting, we can make sure that their voice is very much central to the discussions and the planning. And importantly, IROs raise quality assurance alerts. So if something is not done as they believe it should be, or it's not in time, they raise those issues initially with a social worker, team manager. If it was something more serious, it would go up the line and could be reported to me. I have regular meetings with the IRO managers to look if there are any concerns or issues that I need to be aware of for children. So our focus plan from March for the rest of this financial year aims to increase the use of my review consultation document. We continue to work to improve all our children's health and education outcomes. There's two very key, I'm sure you'll agree, two very key areas that help children grow and thrive and develop and move successfully into adulthood. And we do continue to collect data, be part of quality assurance processes to make sure not only that we know we're doing what we need to do from the data, but we know the quality of what we do from the QA work that's completed. So that outlines very simply what's in a very detailed report. Holly and I are happy to take any questions. The report does also include a one-page synopsis of the report. So that's a one page that can be shared with children and young people and others who might not want to work through a lengthy document, but it's important that they understand and have sight of the key messages. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Pugsley.
Thank you. Nothing much to add, Chair. I do think, however, it is really reassuring to see the continued independent oversight that's really holding us to account for good care planning. So I think that's really good to see. Thank you.
Mrs. Seaton.
I refer you to my previous question on page 200, and it is a very detailed report, so much so that one ran into another of charts and numbers and figures. So I just wanted to know what, I can't see whether that's improved or not, because it's not got out of. And I do usually say something here about percentages and figures, but this time it's slightly different, isn't it? It's a sort of out of. So I'll leave that to you. Page question 200.
Yeah, of course, I can give some more detail. So yes, there is a lot of detail and there are lots of tables. So it's good to always have feedback on how best we can display those. I guess in terms of thinking about the improvement over time, I'd refer you back to 198, but it's got the summary percentages on. So when we think of participation, we tend to think of the children aged over 4 when we think of that meaningful participation. So we can see for this year, it was 92% of those children contributed in comparison to the year before, which was 93, but the year before that, that was 90. So there isn't a lot of change over those 3 years. I guess the table on 200 gives you the detail of in which ways those children participated. So again, we've tried to show it to you over the years to set out exactly in which ways. So you can see some children over 4 have given the views themselves, some children have done it through an advocate, some children haven't. So I guess we've tried to just give you a bit of that detail, because I think we felt that 92% was a really good figure, a big figure, but that just gives the rationale of exactly how those children participated.
Yes, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. Just the first comment on page 178 about the IRO post in our permanently filled, which is really, really good to see. And I know Ofsted were really positive with their comments about the IRO and the work they do with our children. My question, again, probably more for the lead member than for you, Holly, is about on page 185. So committing to further strengthening practice around equality, diversion and inclusion in terms of developing our knowledge and understanding and becoming more culturally competent in our practice, which includes training for the team, undertaking individual learning, having guest speakers and reflecting in team meetings and supervisions how we can best meet the needs. Again, you know, I'm fully supportive of that, but I know the lead member has come out and said that he doesn't agree with EDI. So I'm just wondering if the lead member does support that going forward with the IRO service.
Thank you for the question. It's definitely something that I don't want to go too far in depth with it now that I can pick up with you outside of here. I do think, going back to my response with the previous question as well, the most important thing for me in my position as lead member is ensuring that we provide the best quality services for every single child that we have in care, every single child that we represent in the authority. And this is something that I'm definitely committed to, and it's definitely something that I will be making sure that the department do continue to have their focus on.
Thank you very much. Again, I think maybe more of a statement than a question. I think that policy by the lead member is fine. Individual children have individual needs. But as we heard earlier, there are reports and the statistics that support actually there are demographic issues at play, and there are race issues, and there are things that we can do as a council which supplant the needs of the individual, because we can put them in place before we get to the individual. So I do think it's so important these questions are raised and these challenges are made, because whether we believe in it or not is irrelevant. They are at play consistently, and they're not hidden and they're not made up. They're very relevant. And I think it's important that we keep holding those standards, whether one member or a group doesn't believe in them. We have to uphold them because they come into play. Studies prove it. Real life proves it. Doesn't matter whether a group or a person believes it or not. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, and I guess what you've seen throughout all of the reports is that our focus is about making sure we get it right for children. And there are times when we will need to make individual decisions for individual children, but we also need to be cognizant of the different groups of children that we work with as well, and how we work. So I think what Holly's outlined in the report really well is that in order for us to do our very best for children and groups of children, we will continue to make sure that we know as much as we possibly can in order to deliver the best services. And obviously that's what's reflected in that paragraph that Mrs. Taylor's pulled out, is that we will need to continue to make sure we train, make sure we understand, and make sure that the services we're delivering are keeping children safe, and that we're doing that in the best possible way. So you're right to pull it out, and it's right to challenge us on making sure that we're doing that for all of our children in the best possible way.
Any more questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate this is a long meeting. It's now nearly 2.5 hours. I'll think about how we can get these about 2 hours. So I think that's probably a good time moving forward. But thank you for your patience. Thank you for your contributions. This is a good meeting. And thank you again to the lead member for coming and answering some of these questions. The next meeting is on the 4th of November, nearly Christmas. Yeah, well, thank you for attending today. And I look forward to that next meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.